Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to today's showcase on the potential of education in potential of video in education. I'm David Linky, the manager of Ether at EduGrowth, and we are Australia's education technology and innovation industry hub. Through connection and collaboration, we accelerate Australia's edtech ecosystem globally. Before we begin today's program, let's acknowledge traditional owners of the land. And whilst we are physically spread across the country, we are connected virtually. I acknowledge the continuous and unbroken custodianship of the land, waters, and culture of this country. I thank the elders, past, present, and emerging, for allowing us to gather here today. I'm actually coming to you from the traditional lands of the Bunurong, Boiwurrung, and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nations. And I pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us this afternoon. EduGrowth programs are only possible with the support of our members and our partners. Our K-12 showcases across the year are supported by ClickView. And today we've got an extra special surprise in that we actually have Tara Walsh. She's going to share some of the deep thinking around ClickView's product and how the role that it plays within education across the country. She'll be joined in conversation by Michael Henderson and Matt Fifield, I think. This afternoon showcase is going to look at the role that video plays in education. With the big development of online learning and digital delivery, we're seeing video taking an even bigger and bigger role in the learning mix going forward. Today we're joined by one of the Australia's leading academics in this space, Michael Henderson, who is, let me just get his title correct because it's so impressive, Professor of Digital Futures at Monash University. Michael's explores the connection between technology, pedagogy, and the systems that impact our learners. He has recently helped lead research into the online of the essential role and efficacy of the implementation of EdTech solutions through the lens of the Global EdTech, Victorian EdTech Innovation Alliance. Thanks very much. Welcome, Michael. Hi, Michael. We've got you. We can see you.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. It's wonderful to be here. So yes, thank you. And it's welcome to everyone who's streaming in. So as David said, I'm at Monash University, and one of my passion areas is around video and what we use it for, the kind of impact it has, and how we can better design it. And today I am accompanied by two absolutely wonderful people and people who've become my friends and colleagues and co-researchers. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Tara Walsh. Tara is an experienced educator, a researcher, and someone who's been working with media companies in Australia and the United Kingdom and is now with as the global lead for ClickView. And Tara, I know, is an advocate for the use of technology in education, particularly for inclusion. And she's recently published a very interesting literature review on the impact of video in K-12 classrooms. And I strongly recommend you follow Tara on social media because it's quite an interesting journey to see the different ways that technologies are being used, particularly video. We're also joined by the newly minted Dr. Matt Fifield. So I'm so pleased that Matt can join us. Matt is a deputy principal at Mazenod College in Victoria, Australia. And Matt recently finished his PhD. I'm not sure if you can quite say recently. He's had it for a little while now, where he investigated the relationship between teacher knowledge and instructional video use. And Matt's both an expert in both cognitive science underpinning the video use and also teacher knowledge. Matt's recently published a systematic literature review around the use of video. And he's also done a fantastic paper that's looking at how teachers navigate the 4 billion videos that you might find on YouTube and other social media. So we're here today to talk about video. But video is kind of a rather big and sort of clumsy term. It means a lot of different things. So I think what we might do is open up first with the really obvious question of going, well, okay, what are we talking about when we say video in today's webinar? So I can't see Matt on the screen, so I think there might be a technical issue. We might throw first to Tara. So Tara, when we're thinking about video, what should we be talking about? What are the ways that video is being used in the classrooms, particularly perhaps from the ClickView perspective?
Yeah, so there's lots of ways that video is being used. If we look at it from a broad sort of strokes view, you're looking at for teachers are using it for things like direct instruction and helping them teach their content. That's one of the biggest reasons that they're using video. It's also used for things like revision, differentiation of instruction, which is very important, especially with the kind of classes that an ordinary teacher would have on a day-to-day basis. It's used also, interestingly, and not as much as it should be, for feedback, and we can talk about that a bit later, which is a very important piece, and it's becoming more popular, but I mean, you and Matt can certainly talk about that a bit more than me, that's for sure. And then there's a whole piece around sort of things like performance reviews. Now, that doesn't fit in with what we do, but I know that that's kind of the more general piece. In addition to that, one of the things that we're seeing at ClickView, and we don't just have, we have a whole lot of different types of video on our platform. So we have instructional videos, so video to instruct and teach concepts and things like that. But we also have broadcast content and movies, right? So we have the full kind of range of what you could almost, not the full range, but almost the full range. We don't have VR yet, but you never know. So we're seeing a lot of the uses for that is around social and emotional learning, with a big use of the broadcast content, right? Bluey, loved by primary teachers. And actually, this is sort of off the topic, but I have to share this. It's become so popular, Bluey, in the United States, that there are children talking with Australian accents in the US. I read an article about that the other day, and I thought that was actually brilliant. So, we're seeing a lot of that kind of content used as hooks to talk about difficult subjects, to have conversation starters in the classroom around social and emotional topics. We're also seeing a lot of video being used to support inquiry. Inquiry is a very important active learning approach. Teachers are using different models, from the 5 E's to other types of versions, and they're using a lot of the video as sort of like a replacement of Wikipedia almost as well. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is brain breaks as well. So it kind of fits in with the sort of themes before, but there's sort of little variants there as well. So that's kind of broad strokes.
Wow, that is broad strokes. It's it's interesting. I didn't actually realize that you had full feature length films there, because most of my work, and the work that you and I have been looking at, I think together, has been what we've been calling instructional video. Yes. And that's probably usually, I think you introduced the term to me, the short form video. So we're looking at, what is it, anything between 3 minutes and
could be up to 15, but usually
up to 15. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and certainly in the research space, we often are looking at smaller, or these short form videos, in terms of looking at how these are instructing or conveying ideas, and how then the students are taking that up. Because of course, it's that old adage, you can talk for as long as you like. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone listens or learns from it. So, and I think really that is, let's face it, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? Like with video, we know there's a certain kind of affinity for them, but do they really work? Now, before we move on and actually try to answer that question, I know also, and I mentioned this before, you have a particular interest in inclusive design, and I think that's fascinating, because we don't talk about it enough. So, would you like to open that up a little bit about the kinds of things you're thinking about there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the thing that really interests me around video, and one of the things that a lot of our users, we do a lot of user sort of insights internally as well. And one of the main reasons why teachers are using video, doesn't have to be ClickView, but in the context of ClickView, 2 reasons. Engagement, can't get the kids to concentrate since COVID, so we're using it for engagement, and then obviously hopefully learning as well. I'm hoping that's implied, but yes, I'm sure it would be. And the second thing is it's an inclusive medium, and what they're meaning by that is, and they're able to put captions on, they're able to allow students to engage with it either on their own or as a class. It enables a more they're able to have the visual aid to assist them as well, depending on how they're approaching it. And so one of the things about video that's so powerful is you can also give, you're teaching climate change, you want them to understand what climate change is. You could give 4 videos that are on the same thing to different students that more meet their needs. And that's what's so exciting about video. Okay, that takes a little bit of work to do it, but once you've done it once, it's actually not that hard. And so actually what we're finding more is that video enables a more inclusive classroom. Speaking from myself, when I was teaching, one of the biggest challenges in most Australian classrooms is the range of students that you have in the classroom. It makes the classroom more interesting, for sure. I wouldn't want that personally to change, but it also brings a lot of challenges. And let's face it, teachers who are listening out there, how many of you have had much training on how to really help every student in your classroom, right? And so video enables students to do that, whether they learn at their own pace or whether, they're doing it together as a class, and there are, enablements within the video to assist that. And to me, that is what's so exciting about it, because personally, we're not all the same. And even if we were, that would be boring. But actually, that's what makes video more exciting. And it's not just video, but video is the most obvious thing because so many of us are using it now. I mean, I think it's estimated up to 90% of teachers. I think that's maybe a bit too much, but still, that's, even if it was 60%, that's a lot, right?
Okay, but I'm gonna gently challenge you here. So it's almost, now if I squinted my eye and turned my head to the side a little bit and thought about what you were saying, it almost sounded like you were pushing the line of videos are inherently interesting and students are engaged by them, and they're inherently inclusive.
No.
So talk about that a little bit more, because that is one of the problems we often have. So I research in educational design at all levels, from early childhood through to the workplace, and in all the school sectors. So, and one of the things we often see is a breakup of the curriculum. We've got certain topics to do. We break it up by the number of weeks and then the days, and we say, here's a unit of work, and we break it down by the lessons. And right at the very end, you get someone in your teaching design team, or if you're doing it by yourself, right at the very end, you go, how can I make this interesting? I know, I'll put a video in there. Now, surely that's not what you mean.
Definitely not. Although a lot of people would be doing that, let's be fair. But what the power of that video is, it's giving the words, it's the pictures, it's making the content visual and helping with the explanation. The thing is, right, you can't just give a video just for the sake of it, and without the proper context and help, etc. And you can't just put a video to make the class interesting. Although, if I'm honest, I think that's what a lot of people are doing, right? But I'm not necessarily saying that's the best approach. What I'm saying is that video is inclusive in some contexts if it's used properly. And I think part of the thing we need to remember with video, the video is only good if it's being used and used properly within its, and it's being prepared with as part of a learning design experience, right? Like, video itself is great. How it's being used within the classroom experience and how it's facilitated is better, right? So if you're just showing a video for engagement, you're kind of wasting your time. If you don't set that video up and think about activating prior knowledge or using those kind of really good teaching practices, they're not necessarily just for video, right? And actually engaging with that video whilst you're watching it, or having the student engage while they're watching it via using a tool, an online tool, sort of a formative assessment tool with questions on thinking routines or whatever that might be, and then doing something afterwards, that then makes it inclusive. It allows students to think, but it doesn't make it inclusive it makes it inclusive for anyone. It makes anyone help. It helps them learn, so it's not just the video, it's how you use it as well. It makes
absolutely. And I think something about the selection as well. One of the things about in inclusion is that it's about how we can also represent people. And I think that's something that we need to be quite critical. I remember, because I've got a few grey hairs on my beard, I can remember back in the day when I was doing educational design and multimedia design, and I was selecting media for online materials. This is in the day of dial-up modems and things like this. And I've realized at the time there was very little that we could select. That in fact there was no. I had those old CD-ROMs and things of the 1,000 clip arts and stuff like that. And I'm telling this old story because there's the problem is it's much the same today. Is that there was very little resources that I could select that wasn't showing like a white male business or middle class kind of professional perspective, and we still can fall into those traps, and that's something that we need to consciously be careful about when we're choosing, say, videos. and how they're representing other voice, different perspectives. But coming back to your point, Tara, I'm glad to see you're on, Matt, and we'll get back to you in a moment. But coming back to your point, Tara, about engagement, it's and video for engagement. I think, of course, we can define engagement in a few different ways. I think we shouldn't. My perspective is that it's okay to use video even for purposes that's not for learning outcomes, because sometimes we need an emotional change, we need a change of pace, we need to reset the class, and so we might use videos for those different reasons. But it's purposeful, it's pedagogical, where we're understanding why we're using it to make some sort of change. It may not necessarily be a learning outcome change, but I think learning outcomes are one of the big focus for us today to talk about. And Matt, welcome on board. I'll just get you to check your microphone. Say hi.
Thanks, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we've already done the intros. You missed us saying what a terrible person you are.
Yeah, good. No, that's normal. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic, and we introduce and remind everyone about your publications and your research work, and that you are a deputy head at Mazenod. So welcome. Matt, we've just been talking about different types of videos and different purposes of videos, and what I might do is shuffle along to the next question that we've got, which is around challenges. Now, I'm going to start first with Tara. Tara, from a video production, video hosting kind of company perspective, what are the kinds of challenges that you see when you're looking at video and education? What directs you?
So it's interesting because we both produce and license content, and that is exciting and it's great. But then, there's obviously, we're an education company, so education comes first. But then you've got to make choices about content that's interesting to look at, and there's that whole there's a whole battle all the time between education and entertainment, and where's the line that you draw? And Matt will talk a little bit about the research as well, and but for us, it's always that challenge. Obviously, education always comes first for us, but we want our content to be engaging and interesting to our audience, because our users tell us loud and clear they really like using video for engagement, whatever that might mean, right? And that can mean lots of different things for different purposes, right? But it has to be educational. So that's the big challenge that we have. And it's trying to find that balance, right? And fresh content that looks appealing, because we're competing against YouTube, right? Which has everything. I know, Matt's got a lot to say. We'll say a lot about that.
So Matt, that's from a video production and licensing perspective. The challenge they have, the clients, the users, the teachers, the learners, and they're seeing certain things that's being liked, and engagement is one of those purposes. From your perspective, perhaps let's take a little bit of a researchery angle on it. From your perspective, understanding the research space, what's the kind of challenges that we're faced in terms of this knowing what is a good video?
Yeah, really good question. And what is a good video is necessarily a little bit broad. Good for what purpose? And most of my research has been in educational efficiency, what makes for an efficient video. But one of my participants in one of my studies once said, doesn't matter how effective the video is, if they're falling asleep in the back seat, they're not going to learn much. And that's the reality. But what makes for an effective video? Well, one that leads our students from where they are in terms of their learning to where we want them to be. And I'd like to just first to revisit that word engagement, because I actually think it's a word that's probably bandied around education quite a lot, but not really grasped. And my understanding of engagement is convincing a young person to do what is difficult now to get a payoff later. Now, that sometimes looks like an activity. Sometimes that looks like a quiz. Sometimes that might look like a video, but it's whatever is going to get that person to do what is difficult now to get that academic payoff later. And when we recast it in that light, sometimes the best video can be the shortest one possible. And certainly what we've found in terms of the research is there's a thing called the 6 minute. We sometimes call it the 6 minute myth. It came out of some research done in MOOC context, those large online universities. And what was shown is that there's this big precipitous drop off from about 6 minutes onwards. And that's not just 6 minutes from the 6 minute point. That's anyone who gets an educational video that is over 6 minutes to start with. So if you give a young person a 10-minute video, chances are they're not even going to click on it. They're not even going to start the process. So one of the big things that we found is length. That said, and I could talk forever about the difficulties of the research. One of the problems is that much of the research on educational efficiency and educational effectiveness is not done in real classroom situations. So we use that 6 minute one because it's as close as we get to real life, because it's done in real educational outcomes. But even then, it's tertiary and it's online, so it's not really our classroom space. Johnny's not sitting next to Jimmy and they're not flicking paper at each other. That state of the actual. So one of the things that we're running into is to tell you just how divorced some of this research is from the actual context. We've got young people, or sometimes adults, sitting in front of a screen in a lab, judging how much they recall straight after watching something. Now, any teacher in this stream is going to say that does not look like my year 9 class on a Wednesday afternoon. So that's something to keep in mind. The effectiveness is going to be determined by the teacher's desired outcome, even though we've got some broad kind of what makes for a good video, which I can go into if we want to later on.
I think we should in a little bit. So Tara, I know you've been looking at K-12 schools in particular, and Matt's already alluded to the fact that a lot of the research has been located outside of the school sector. Yeah. First of all, was it easy to find school-based literature?
Not really, and I'd have to thank you, Matt, for some of the work that you and Michael have done in the past, because we got to use some of the reviews that you had conducted. But then in addition to that, I went a bit further and looked at sort of special education and sort of flipped learning environments as well to try and find some more studies. It still only found 76 for the scoping review that we did. So that's not that many. Now, we only looked at it very... it wasn't a very broad search in that regard. I mean, it was actually, because there's thousands of actual papers that have been looked at. And certainly, so what we didn't really do beyond those papers, but it's not that much, right? And even I'm doing a lot of research at the minute around active learning and kind of integrated learning activities, and I'm not finding that much either. And I'm doing slightly different search terms and a whole variety of things, and it's not proving to give me that much information, which is good and bad, right? Bad because we don't know as much, and we have to take a lot of what we're learning in the higher ed to see if we can, apply it down. I think the other thing that frustrated me specifically was that there's a lot of middle school, a lot of the studies are in middle school, which is exciting because I love that area of education. So that's grades 5 to 8 or 9. But lower primary in particular, it's really like, there's not much there. It's a shame because our primary users particularly are growing, and since the pandemic, primary educators are definitely using video content more. Why not? You would, right? And so that's a bit of a shame as well. So yeah, it's frustrating.
But surely, I mean, the question that people might ask is surely media production companies, it's a well-trodden path, right? We know how to make feature-length movies. I mean, I don't, but people like Spielberg know how to do this kind of thing. And so surely the video production world must have the language and the ideas of knowing exactly how to turn on and off the students and how to get this idea across. So what did you find when you started exploring that?
Well, okay, so yes and no, right? So my big frustration is I've been working for the context for everyone, I've been working in media production now for 5 years in the UK and in Australia. And I think before we get to what you just said, one of the biggest things that frustrated me more was that the academic world don't talk the same way as we do in media. There's a bit of crossover, but oh my gosh, my head does my head in. It makes me want to cry, actually, because the way people are talking about, the cognitive scientists mostly are talking about video. I'm like, what are you actually talking about? And then they don't even show me what the video is. So I'm like, it's blowing my head off. So the first thing is it's a bit of a mess. We need to sort of fix that. And I reckon we could fix that down the track. And I'm really, I think academia and media need to get together. Well, the other thing that I was trying to find online was some kind of definitional framework. Maybe someone had put together like a little guide on terms that the industry uses for short form video content. Now, there's a lot of stuff on film language and the language of film. Awesome. But yeah, I couldn't find anything, right? I know the BBC have their own little style guide in-house. I'm sure the ABC have an equivalent. We've kind of got our own equivalent, but where is it for public use, and how can academia find it, right? I think, you know, me getting a bit frustrated with academia was all good and well, but then when I couldn't actually find it myself, it's not, you know, how can they know any better? So I think that's, for me, that was the biggest eye opener, actually, because I assumed when I did this that there would be something somewhere. Now, the reason for this is short form video content's kind of really taken off in the last 10, 20 years, particularly the last 10 years, right? And so it's not new, but it is newish, right? Especially educational, for educational purposes, although, you know, you could find examples for a long time, I know that. But in terms of the short form content, and it's funny because the marketing world also has its own language too, by the way. So there's, you know, all that complication, and I could go on about this for ages, but I'm going to stop there because it's it's my high horse.
So really what we're seeing is it's a messy space, okay?
A little bit.
Because I was quite interested in that, in having an opportunity through yourself, start to understand how the media understands education. And we really are like, we're all in it for the same game. We're in it to help the learners, right? But we're coming out in such different angles. I mean, one of the other things, if we go back, and you said, you know, you wish media and academic, and I suspect also the grassroots teachers all speak together and try and figure out the right language and everything. But one of the interesting things is just to go back to the academic side of things as well. I know, Matt, it was really interesting. You were pointing out to me about how little replicability of studies are. And so I just thought, before we talk about principles or good design ideas or anything, let's just open that up a little bit, because I think it'd be nice if the people who are watching go off and start doing reading, that they can start to evaluate what's going on here and try to look out for some key features. So, Matt, when you're looking at literature or even synthesis, you know, blogs or people's, you know, personal sites, and they're talking about stuff that they've been reading or what's good and what's not good, what's the kind of stuff that you might look for that makes you say, yeah, this looks like it might be something I should pay attention to?
Yeah, look, what can be practically applicable, I think. What I'm looking for is not something done in terms of what's valuable when I'm, just to clarify, valuable when I'm reading in the academic space, from the literature.
Yeah, I think so. It was a bit of a waffly question, wasn't it? But I was trying to tackle into, how do we judge what is good work and not good work in the research space, really?
Yeah, look, and it's always going to be a case of, I like to say that context is king, and my classroom's going to look different from yours, and that's not a waffly answer to a good question. What I'm looking for is something that I can apply in my classroom. Now that, or that can inform my decision making, is probably the better way to look at it. So if I'm looking at, I mentioned the 6-minute rule before, I'm looking when I'm reading, okay, where was that established and how was that established and how like my context is that? And if something's got a robust context, robust number of participants, and it's similar to my context, then I know that I can probably use that to inform my practice. Dylan Williams talks about the Frankensteining of literature, and what happens is we get this headline idea, 6-minute rule, great, and therefore no video can go over 6 minutes. Everything must run 6 minutes. That's absolutely not what the research shows, because it's in a different context. The second we start Frankensteining research, that's when we run into trouble. So it's about finding a context that's similar to mine, and then asking myself, well, how does that run in my practice? Probably a good place to start if anybody wanted to look at multimedia design is the work of Richard Mayer. But even then, you've got to look at what contexts he's doing those studies in. I could pitch my own work. Go and have a look there.
Well, you should, and I think we should share some of your work. So just look up Matt Fifield and you'll find some great work that he's done. And also Tara Walsh's literature review around K-12 video impact. That also talks about Mayer's work and cognitive theory of multimedia learning. And interesting in that space, something that both of you have been talking to me about is how in a number of those studies, even the language changes. So from researchers might talk about video, and Matt, I think you pointed out to me that you came across a number of studies where they talked about animations, and intuitively we would have thought that's like cartoons or something, but it actually turns out to be real live video, kind of as we would talk about video. So it's something I think I'd be encouraging everyone, please go out and read, but also just check that what they're talking about, whether this is a study that's been replicable, and the kinds of sort of theory base it's got. But let's come back to that. Now, I know Mayer's work and subsequent work, and both of your work, has been picking out different kinds of principles as these are kind of video design principles that are a little bit more robust than others, or a little bit more perhaps useful for school teachers. So Matt, if you had to pick, could you choose maybe say 5 or so and just rattle them off? And I'm sure Tara will pick up or even challenge you on some.
Absolutely. Just before I did, there was this great question that came up on the screen. I'm going to give a rapid fire 2-point answer to it. It was about the context in which video is most effective. At a really personal student level, feedback. So written feedback has great limitations. Michael's done some great work in this. Get a program like Screencast-O-Matic or lots of platforms have it inbuilt, a 2-minute or a 1-minute video feedback to a student's going to have great impact. That's taken fire across our schools. Across our school, most of our teachers don't even write written comments anymore. It's video feedback. That's wonderful. That's one. And the second one is an amazing context in which I've seen video used really well is the first couple of minutes of a lesson to do some direct instruction whilst the teacher sets up something else. I call it the teacher duplication context, where you've got a teacher who's either recorded themselves or is using a pre-made video. That's doing the instruction to the students whilst the teacher's doing either one-on-one work with a student or doing all of that other work that teachers know has a bigger impact than direct instruction many times, but they don't get the chance to do it. So it's that duplication within the class. So there's 2 contexts.
I love that, Matt. All of a sudden, like how many times have I been in class and I've been going, I wish I had a second set of hands. So what you're saying is I could be my own second set. I love that. That's a great idea.
Now, I must say to all the teachers out there, it does feel a bit weird when I'm talking in my own classroom and I can hear students with their headphones on listening to me whilst I'm also talking to somebody else. It does feel like I'm stoking my own ego at some point, that there's so many of me running in the classroom, but it does work really, really well. The other great thing is that the student who might take a little bit longer can watch it again later. I can use it next year. I'm still using the same instruction I videoed myself 5 years ago. But you asked about some really clear design principles that we can keep in mind. Number 1, keep it short. I talked about the 6-minute rule, but even shorter than that. There was some kind of folk wisdom going around flipped learning that it was a minute per year, per year level. No, it's got to be much shorter than that. Much shorter than that. A year 12 student doesn't want 12 minutes. Okay? So as short as possible, and break it down into chunks if it's too long. If you've got 15 minutes of content, great, that's 3 5-minute videos. That's not a 15-minute video. They just won't click if you run it that long. Number 2, seductive details. So that's all the fancy other stuff. Get rid of your background music. It's not helping. It's a split attention effect. So the brain is processing the music and the content, and the music's not helping. So you can get rid of that. Get rid of the flashy animations. Get to the point. So we want as concise as possible, as restricted as possible, without going to the point of it being dull and boring. Try and draw that one. Now that's a clear. Now I like ClickView, great production Fantastic. But one of the things that I've said to ClickView is get rid of those narratives at the start of the videos. So often there'll be a bit of direct instruction in the middle, but there'll be this narrative at the start, which is a bit naff. That's a seductive detail. It's taking the student's attention away. Third one, include misconceptions in your video. You might think A, but B. Derek Muller, who's now he's now in media and getting paid the big bucks. He started doing his PhD in this value of misconceptions, and he says the problem is not that the students don't know anything; it's that they know lots, but much of it is untrue. So at the start of a video, if you're recording your own, you might think that, or some people think that, but that's not true. If we undo the misconception, we're far more likely to get uptake. Fourth thing to think about is, where is this video going to be played? Is this on a big screen, we're all watching it as a collaborative activity, or is this individual? And if it's individual, it must be completely contained. It shouldn't. There shouldn't be any content in it that is confusing for students. So that's something to keep. You'll see there's a theme here, being as clear and as concise as possible. The fifth thing is that videos on their own played, now I say naked videos, conjures up terrible images, but what it means is a video on its own, nothing else wrapped around it, no activity, no quiz, no nothing I have to write while I'm watching, no invitation to pause, for example, will give the impression of learning without actually leading to any learning. There's a great study by Jing and Shakhtar, great names, where they give a video on a particular topic. They ask a student, how much have you learned? They say, yeah, lots. And then they give them a quiz and it's not much. They give the students some interlaced quizzes or activities. How much have you learned? Not that much. Actually, it's quite a lot. So what we do is we get students to be critical thinkers when we actually ask them to do something while watching. So there's 5 things that we can put in the bank. I think they're all pretty reliable.
Oh, are they reliable? Okay, let's throw over to Tara. What do you think, Tara? Would you choose the same 5?
Probably not. I choose some of them the same. I think the narrative point's an interesting one. And I think storytelling is very effective. But you're right. If it's extraneous or unnecessary storytelling, then we should not add it. That said, analogy and metaphor and all those kind of things can be super helpful when you're telling a story and helping people learn, but it does depend on context. So I would sort of say sometimes narrative doesn't hurt in certain contexts. But did you say short? Yes, I would agree with that, although you can make longer videos more useful if you segment them, which I think you did say, Matt, so I would agree with that. For me, a big one that came out of the literature that we looked at was pre-training. So pre-training content before you show a video. It might be vocabulary, or pre-training how to use the tool that you're letting the kids or students, watch it is super effective and very useful, and that kind of fits into the sort of activation activities that you might do with other kind of texts as well. I really love integrated activities, learning activities. That's a big one. I know, Matt, we've talked about that before. It's probably just wasn't one that you didn't have 6 that you could add in, but that's one that's definitely supported a lot by research. That can mean a lot of things. It can mean questions. It could mean, I don't know, it could mean adding an activity afterwards. It could be I don't know, a brain dump as a retrieval lecture. It could be whatever it could be, right? There's lots of kind of variations of what you could do. It could be guided discovery along the way as well. And that's quite useful. What else? How many have I given? About 4 at the minute. And the last one this is one that I love, and it's used with special needs education and primary. It's video modeling and prompting to help teach skills, life skills. It might also be mathematical skills in one instance. I thought it was kind of cool, teaching Pythagoras theorem using, it was kind of insane, but I mean, I think it would have worked with me if I was learning maths. I thought it was really, really interesting. And it's kind of stuff that I wish I'm an ex-secondary teacher like Matt. I'd never heard of that before, and I actually think it would have been really great to teach potentially, soft skills to some of my students who were not, and we know soft skills are actually hard. And so for me, video modeling and prompting, it's not a principle in Maya's world, but it's one that's come up that I'm really interested in. I don't know if we can call it a principle, but it's definitely a generative activity. So let's just add it in there for today. So I think that's 5.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
I might add on to that there are some times where you shouldn't use a video. So,
Totally.
so just piggybacking on what Tara's just said, human movement and modeling of things is a great time to use video. If you're teaching a PE lesson and you want students to throw correctly, now you can model that 1,000 times out the front. If there's a bit of pre-learning where the students have to watch the steps of that, what's often used in the research is putting Lego together. So there you go, if you want to teach someone how to put Lego together. But that kind of human movement, how to do A, B, and C. Now, a great place for that to be used would be in the science classroom. Here's how we use a Bunsen burner. Use a video for that. It's great. The student can have it in front of the Bunsen burner. Now, you do it out in front of the class. It's 15 meters away from the student. They might not see. They have it right in front of them. They can do it step by step. They can rewind. They can watch it again. Perfect use for video. If you want to teach mapping skills, don't use a video, because maps by their nature are not linear streams of information. They are a piece of paper and you look here, 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 and here. You don't watch it as a stream of information, which is necessarily what a video is. It's time-based in a stream. You don't flick backwards and forwards very easily in a video in the same way as you do when you're looking here, there, and everywhere on a map. So just because you can use a video doesn't mean you should. Always ask, does this content lend itself to a audio-visual stream of information? As some things do, how to use a Bunsen burner, some things don't, how to read a map.
I think that's, sorry to interrupt, that fits to purpose, which Michael, have you spoke about before, and Matt, you've said, what is the purpose of using that video? If that purpose is not served by using a video, don't use it. And it's about even explaining the purpose to the student. One of the things that I am really passionate about is when you're going to show a video, tell the kids why as well. Just set them up as well. But purpose is critical. There, add my 2 cents worth in.
I'll build on that. I'll add. I agree with all of those, but I'll add one in as well. Is if you think about the nature of video, often video is because it's got so much coming at you. It's got so many sequences of images flashing across on the screen, so we can have so much action going on, and we can have so much audio going on, whether it's voice or some sort of sound effects or audio in the background. We can have so much going on, and we forget sometimes that we need to direct students, learners, and to be honest, teachers, to focus in on specific parts of the video. So it might be that thing we're saying, look out for, or we might be choosing videos because we want to try and get rid of a lot of extraneous kinds of details and get them to focus in on one thing. Or if we can't get rid of the extraneous, we need to get them to somehow focus in. So there's a kind of an element there that we need to be aware of. Now, Matt, I know that you've done a lot of work about the selection of video and some of the pitfalls and some of the reasons why teachers do and don't select certain videos. If we were going to just quickly flip around to that, before you even get to the use of a video, what's the thing that teachers should be aware of, the pitfalls and traps of selecting?
Yeah, we're talking to ClickView today, but we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is YouTube. So in my study, it's somewhere in 85 to 90% of the videos shown in Australian classrooms are coming from YouTube, and so it's there now. ClickView has a similar kind of search engine, but YouTube is, one of my papers is called Navigating 4 Billion Videos. It's up to 4.5 billion videos now. So how do you choose one amongst 4 billion videos? You don't. The algorithm does for you. And so while you're searching on the algorithm, the very quick primer for everyone out there, because I think everyone in the world should know this, YouTube measures effectiveness by session length. That's not video length. That's from when you click on the platform to when you click off the platform. So anything that holds you on the platform is preferenced in the YouTube algorithm. Anytime you drop off the platform, the last video you watched is punished by the algorithm. That means a particularly effective video might not, that then encourages you to leave the platform, may never be surfaced in the algorithm. So if all you do is just search, I'm looking for dolphins, what will pop up will be your clickbait kind of 5 things you didn't know about dolphins, because this is what plays into the addictive human mind. Because of that, content providers on YouTube tend to create that kind of content. So what I'd encourage teachers to do is to be really selective when you're putting in search strings into YouTube. Be very particular. Maybe even include the tag of a producer that you trust, Dolphins ABC or ABC Kids, and you might get something from ABC. That's one of the good things about educational providers like ClickView, but we know that 90% of us are stopping at that first port of call, which is YouTube. So that's probably the first thing I should say is be really selective, make your search string a bit longer, looking for shorter videos, to the point, reliable producers. One of the most popular producers of commerce videos doesn't even have any undergraduate study in commerce on YouTube. He is a content producer and he realized there was nothing in the commerce space, so he produced into it. So that's just be really discerning about the content, particularly with science videos. Some of them are, my videos, total rubbish, just not scientific. So yeah, just be really discerning.
Thank you. And certainly I know, you get to get a bit tired after the scrolling of death, and you scroll down Yosemite and you've seen something's been used 200,000 times. You go, that must be okay. But it's quite interesting the number of times you come across teachers who use a video without having actually watched the video to the end. And Matt, I know that's something that you found in your work. So there's a little warning to us all, and Matt, I'm sure you can tell a few stories about some of the things that may have happened because of that. But we won't go there because time is running along. We've got a question on the screen which I've been staring at for a little while, going, it's a bit of a complicated question. Yeah, go for it, Matt.
Take that one. Take it.
Yeah, we'll both have a little go. I'm a big believer that we explicitly teach what we're teaching now. The human brain is a one-track pony. It can do one thing at a time, and it will attend to one thing at a time. Now, there are 1,000 thoughts, but our mind will switch. It's called network switching. It switches between tasks, but that's not a very efficient way of learning. So if we're teaching narrative story writing, teach narrative story writing. Now, that can be done in lots of great ways. There's lots of ways of doing that. But to build in a narrative in a different video when we're trying to teach Bunsen burners, so we teach a story about kids going on a picnic that might have a Bunsen burner, that's distracting. So that's not going to be an efficient or enjoyable way for a young person to learn. So I say, if you're teaching narrative writing, great, do that. If you're teaching science, do that. So that would be my statement to it. But Tara, yours.
No, just to add to that, I mean, if you look at the production of a video and you look at short form content and you write a script, for example, and if you're looking at a narrative and you're then teaching narrative writing and you're using that video to teach narrative writing, you can, because we actually produce the narratives in the same way you write a story, right? So if I'm looking at that from a slightly different perspective, and you can totally use these narrative storytelling videos to teach narrative writing as part of your curriculum, because when we write a narrative and when we write scripts, and Nathaniel, just a shout out to you, for example, or script writers, they write it with the story in mind. There's an overarching plot from beginning, when there's characters and all that kind of stuff. So if that's what that question meant, knock yourself out. Because I think Matt and I are saying the same thing. But if that narrative is unnecessary, yes, that makes sense, 100%. But yeah, totally use it. I was an ex-English teacher. I used short form and longer film to help kids engage with the storytelling process in a really nice, short, concise way that sometimes written text just doesn't do. So please do it. And if you do, show me what you've done. Be curious.
Just that last point on that, there's a difference between a film and an instructional video for that. One is a prompt to that narrative and one is just instructing you how to do something. So pick the right one for the right place. Video is a busy time. Surprisingly less than we thought. It's certainly one of the only studies in the literature when I was looking at it that was looking at use of video in classes was done in the UK and the US, done in primary school classes, and that was what it was being used for. It was actually being used as release time for teachers because they weren't being given enough. That's a systemic problem. That's an institutional problem, and go for it, teachers, if that's what its purpose is for. If it's Friday afternoon video time and you're showing a film, great. From my research, no, it was actually a frustration of teachers that if a video was not doing the job efficiently, engaging students, they didn't want to use it because it was a waste of their class time. So I think more and more as video becomes less of the novelty and more of the tool, no, it won't be used as busy time. Maybe VR headsets, but that's another conversation. Yeah.
I love that. I love it.
And there's a connected question here, which I'll throw to Tara then. So there's always the question of, is it simply busy time or keeping the students busy? And Matt, thank you for the response. And the connected one then, of course, is, well, how do we know that they're getting something from this? How do we know they're actually engaged? Tara,
yes,
do you have any ideas?
It's a good question. There's lots of answers to this. So that if we're looking at a tool like ClickView, let's use that as an example. We're not the only company that has particular tools to help teachers understand whether their students are actually paying attention and on task. So there are sort of interactive tools and analytics that you can use as overlays over videos, and you can analyze those to make sure and pop in questions and thinking routines and a variety of other things, as well as engagement metrics that you can tell when the students are paying attention and things like that. I mean, if you're in the classroom, it's about pausing and asking questions and getting the students to talk to each other and analysing, which is what you guys do anyway. Like, it's no different from normal classroom instruction. So they're either the tools that you use to help you, and I would recommend, if you're getting kids to use the videos and watch the videos on their own, use those tools, use the analytics, look at the heat maps, see if the students are paying attention. Where they're dropping off might be where you need to start putting a prompt. It could be extraneous information that's irrelevant, right? Or it could be that they're just losing with a will to live because they're not understanding it at that stage. So you can use that data, and this is what I really love, to then hone in on that section. And then at that stage, that's where you stop and you segment that video either via that platform tool or your classroom instruction. And that's powerful, right? Because then you know, and then you can ensure you can get kids to help each other in a variety of other ways. So if it's with you at the front, you do what you're always doing. There's no different when using a video, but I would recommend using these tools as much as possible and using that data to work out where things are going wrong for some of the students. And it might not be all of them, by the way. So I hope I've answered that one adequately, whoever answered that question.
So, okay, we've got a question on the screen, and in the back channel, all three of us are fighting over who gets to answer this one. And I've pulled rank and said I want to get this one first. So the question is, can well-crafted videos replace skilled teachers? And it's a fascinating question. What I'd be saying, well, if a video can replace the teacher, they're possibly not that skilled. When you think about teaching, the nature of teaching, right? The nature of pedagogy, it's about reaction. And people go, oh my heavens, what are you talking about, Professor Michael Henderson? What the hell are you talking about? Teaching is not about reaction. Actually, it is. A big part of teaching is about reaction, is because it's about understanding, observing, and evaluating, judging those learners in front of you and figuring out what is the next best thing that you can do for them and with them. And so when you think about it, if you could have a video that could replace the teacher, the video somehow needs to predict exactly what that student needs at any one time. And that is taking into account the fact that a student will change constantly if you're doing a really great job as a teacher, because the student will constantly be growing, developing, questioning, getting stuck, hopefully getting deliciously stuck into problems. And so the teacher's obviously always helping them out, giving that little hand, giving that little hint, that little help with that struggle. So videos can't replace the teacher. And indeed, I'd be very, very surprised if the teacher wasn't actually, or if I would actually be hoping that the teacher is working possibly harder when a video is playing, because the teacher will be doing all of that extra work, like Matt said before, about that extra set of hands in the classroom, because while the video is happening, you can do so much more as well. Okay, Matt, I think you
Very quickly. Now, I'm going to hold that up for a second. That is what we give our young teachers to show them what happens in a class. There's a whole bunch of boxes there. One of those is called explicit instruction, which often happens within a can video be used to replace the teacher's explicit direct instruction? Yes. Can it be used to replace anything else in a class? No, not really. Maybe guided practice if it's a how-to video. Maybe it's so little elements. Can it help the teacher by doing that bit while the teacher's doing something else? Yes. Can it craft a lesson? Can it replace the pedagogue's mind and interaction with you? No, absolutely not. It's in the same way the textbook can't. If we could all learn by textbooks, we'd just be sitting at home with textbooks. So
100% agree with both of what you said. It's a tool that can be powerful, but it does not replace the teacher. And I would not want that to happen. Teachers are too important. You bring so much more to the video experience. So yeah, I've got nothing more to add to what they're
Okay, so we're coming close to the end of our time together, and it's always so wonderful to be in the same room, even a virtual room, as both of you. What I thought we might do is just do a quick whip around of going, if we were thinking how might the world be better, and helping educators with videos, what needs to happen, what needs to change, what do we need to know differently, do differently, what do companies like ClickView, what can they do to help teachers? Matt, what can researchers do to help teachers? What's going on? So Matt, first to you.
Yeah, there's hard work to be done in replicating some of these lab studies in actual classrooms. Do students actually engage? And that's where companies like ClickView can be really useful, because they've got that data set of what students engage with and what they don't. I think we can incentivize educational video producers to get off a platform that incentivizes them being inefficient, YouTube, and incentivize them to get onto a platform that is so good that it brings educators across and wants to use it. And in terms of teachers, I think we can empower teachers in terms of either in their pre-service teaching training or even in their ongoing professional learning, to think about the structure of the human mind, the human brain, and how it processes information, and therefore think through videos in that way.
That's brilliant. I mean, from our perspective, it's basically, to be honest, we need to make sure we continue to build product around design principles and research and pedagogy at all times. You know, one of the things that we do internally is we have a blueprint that references all of these things, and we are not only designing the product itself, and the product is the platform, looking at from a design perspective of the video, how we approach things like our resources, making them rich and helping teachers, taking the hard work from teachers so they don't have to worry about it. And that's an important piece. The other piece is, and this is the last thing I'll say, is a lot of companies do talk to users, and we certainly are, but it's about profiling the right user for the right time and talking to the right school or the right user to help with the right outcomes. One of the things we're doing at the minute is talking to a lot of experienced educators and educators in their first 5 years to sort of understand some of the challenges, but also the knowledge that they bring into how they're using video. And it's about, you know, and so that, what I would say is that, you know, schools open, you know, schools being made more available to edtech companies is always very, we're very lucky. A lot of our users are very wanting to get involved, but I know that a lot of edtech companies do struggle getting into the right types of schools. They seem to, you know, gravitate to certain schools, but then they're all of the same. And that doesn't really help you build a good product, right? You need to talk to all types of users or potential users, and then you kind of don't end up with the product that is actually what the users need in the markets that you might be trying to attract. So I think it's about, and some schools, and I know why schools don't want us in there too. I get it, but it's about working together to try and really build these products and this content in a way that is helpful.
Yeah, I might jump in more actually, Michael. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in because I wanted to ask a question. The one benefit of being Managing Director of EduGrowth is I get to ask questions that came. There was a fantastic question that came in there, and we just let it through the keeper. I'm not going to let you go. So I want to come back. I want to come back to a question which was in there, and it was a slight variation on it. So I'm going to add my own friend's view on this as well. My friend is a head of literacy at a primary school. So I wanted to ask you specifically, Matthew, about teachers are expected to find these fantastic videos. Do they need to also be amongst being substitute parent and dealing with well-being now, dealing with remote learning, dealing with a full curriculum, dealing with changes? Do they also need to be semi-professional video producers as well in their part-time, or do you expect a different level of quality?
Yeah. And we should acknowledge that teaching is unfair because we can never do all of it. And the second we feel we're getting close to doing all of it, there's this other thing that we should be doing. And when we get close to that, we could be differentiating for this student over here. Please look at what you do, not what you don't. But I think the Grattan Institute have been doing some really interesting work recently about collaborative practice. My research suggested that when we're planning units, we do that together. When we're planning the assessment, we tend to do that together. When we're planning the excursion, we do that together. And then searching for videos, you do it on your own. That comes down to that kind of in-class use of finding all these little things. Why is it that those things are done in silos? So what I would suggest is, as much as possible, foreground that. What are the resources, either video or text or other, that we're going to be using in our classroom practice? And administrators out there, teaching team time, set aside time where we're searching for that resources is something that's done collaboratively. Now, those teaching a class on their own, the only teacher at your year level, I'm sorry, I probably just made you cry because you're doing it all on your own anyway. But as much as we can, making that a collaborative effort rather than the work of the individual teacher at 9 o'clock the night before. The last thing I'd say is, if you don't have time to find a great video, don't find one. Do another activity, because the risk of finding a really bad one's probably
fair enough. Matt,
David, I'm going to jump in there as well,
yeah,
and just say you don't need to also do Spielberg productions.
No.
I think it's well recognised that if you're doing an authentic, rough, raw, from you as the teacher to your students, that kind of authenticity has rated very highly in a lot of different forms of video, and particularly feedback video. And students actually rate that as along the lines of honesty and sort of personalization because it's raw. So good news back to your friend and colleague.
Actually, one other thing I can add to that is,
okay.
Sorry, this will be quick. I promise I can't help myself. You can optimize bad videos, right, by certain practices, right? So you could, not a bad video, but a less than optimal video, right? So you might find a video that you've had for years or that suits your curriculum need. And whilst it might not be as great as it could be, if you segment the content and use signaling and a variety of other methods, you might be able to make it work, although it's not ideal, by the way. Just thought I'd add that in.
So it has been an incredibly interesting conversation. I've certainly filled a page of notes here. So Matt, thank you very much. Tara, thank you very much. Michael, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So we now get to continue this conversation about the role of video within education. And we are going to extend that conversation and actually hear about practical implementation. And we're actually going to hear about a school that's doing just those things. So I'm going to welcome Jane and Chloe from Capture the Action, who is going to deliver us a bit of a case study in partnership with a couple of educators. So Jane, I've only got a bio for you. I'm sorry, I don't have Chloe's bio with me, but I've got Jane Kelly has been a primary and middle school teacher since, it says 1895 in my script here. I think that they've made a mistake, right? I don't think that's fair, right? Okay, I'm going to go with 1985. Can we go with that?
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
Specialising in media studies and filmmaking, Jane is currently consulting and teaching filmmaking in schools and writing online filmmaking courses for primary school teachers. So I'll hand you over and I'll welcome Lani and Alison to join us as well.
Yes, thank you.
Over to you.
Hi, I'm sorry, David. My name's Chloe Gardner and I'm the co-founder of Capture the Action as well, alongside Jane. So yes, Jane has been teaching since 1895. No, just joking. 1985. So her skill set is very expansive. My background is I ran South Australia's and Australia's only dedicated film school for kids, a hands-on teaching film school for kids called Kids Camera Action for 10 years, and successfully sold that 3 years ago, with the intention of joining forces with Jane and creating Capture the Action, which is an online film school for kids. So yeah, we've been working together for quite a number of years outside of Capture the Action as well, on the Adelaide International Youth Film Festival, where we were in charge of sort of, bringing films from all over the world, made by adults and professional filmmakers, as well as young emerging filmmakers, and bringing them to a really wide audience. We had youth juries, we had experts coming in, we had youth exchange programs running all over the world. So we are very, very passionate about filmmaking, media arts and video content when it comes to our kids, because it's all around them anyway.
Yes, and just to add to that as well, so both Chloe and I will be getting a lot of requests from teachers in South Australia to ask them, how do we teach film in schools? They knew that their students wanted to make films themselves, and that mostly they're learning through screen content, so they want to make their own really effective content as well. So because we were getting so many requests, we just thought, hey, let's take this online, get it out to kids who are regional, and not just in the state, but around the country and hopefully around the world as well. So we've developed this really exciting week filmmaking course that covers all stages of development, but also not just filmmaking skills. It's about how to create a story, how to develop characters, and really pulling it all together into some really great quality films. So, when we look at really how filmmaking and videos are used in the classroom, it's not just to help students to make films, but also for teachers to make films so they can gain the benefits of using video in their classrooms. And that extends from being able to flip the classroom so that you can have videos to show and make at home. It also makes video content accessible to all students, no matter what level of ability they're at. So yeah, all those beautiful benefits that come with creating video content and having students learn through videos. Our filmmaking courses are mostly video content. So we've got kids talking to kids about filmmaking skills and all those sort of all that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, in a minute we'll sort of take you through, I guess, our working website at the moment, and sort of show you how, I guess, our lessons and our courses are structured. But really, like, what we were doing is we were responding to a need, and mind you, this is at primary school level. I'm not sure if we've mentioned that. Whilst our expertise expands from reception all the way to stage 2, we definitely are focusing on the primary school age. Reason being is because filmmaking and media arts is effectively offered as subjects in from high school. Not in every school, but definitely it's it's becoming more and more needed and wanted by the student, the student cohort to be, gaining these skills, and they're kind of doing it anyway. So it's just a matter of, whether or not schools have the capacity to be able to teach it in a formal way. And what we were finding, in my experience of going into schools, like Jane was working with one school in particular for a large amount of her career, and she really built up that filmmaking program within that school to a level that, other schools were calling her, going, how do we adopt your program in our school? And what I was doing was I was taking my sort of, commercial business and going to schools, primary schools, and taking it into the schools and saying, and they were, wanting it and needing it. But because the teachers themselves are so, they're so time poor, especially primary school teachers, I would expect, they have to teach all the subjects under the sun, and they really have to, know they, in a way, be a jack of all trades. And it's quite, when there's this new technology out there and new interests from students, while schools do their best at adopting it, it's hard, I believe, for teachers to sort of keep up with those trends. Whilst they do their best, at the end of the day, what they tend to do is they just tend to get experts in to come and teach that particular subject, or, to enhance that learning within that kind of curriculum, segment that they're teaching at that point in time. So the teachers, whilst they can, I guess, research and look for ways to teach, how to make a better film, that takes up their time and energy, and in a way, like, they don't necessarily, there's lots of resources out there, they just don't necessarily know which steps to be sort of taking in a way to make it a succinct, well-structured lesson for students to have great outcomes. And so that's what we've done.
Yeah.
We
made it easy for them.
So
years of knowledge just in one place.
So really what we do is, like, this program is designed for a teacher who might not know much about it, or, knows enough, but just wouldn't really know how to sort of go from start to finish, like an idea, a concept, all the way to, uploading a film. And so we just make it really clear. We put the steps there for them, have like extension lessons by looking at other films and analysing them. And we've just made it simple, and they can actually, in a way, learn at the same time as they're teaching the kids, because the kids are going through the steps at the same time as the teacher. And it's, it's a very basic understanding of, structuring, how to do this type of lesson, this media arts lesson.
So we've got to the stage where we've developed our website, and then we went out to some schools to pilot it. So maybe we'll show you aspects of the website so that you have an idea of what's involved. And then we'll get on to Lani and Ali, who were wonderful at being pilot schools for us. And so we were able to really test how the lessons go with the students, how they react to it, how useful is it for the teacher, and we can get some feedback, which is a big part of our launch program, is to make sure that we're covering all the needs of students and teachers as well. So let's have a look at some screen sharing.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll show you our current website. So this is where you land. So if you're interested in sort of like looking a little bit more into Capture the Action, this will go live by the end of the week. We do have a landing page at the moment, so you can find us regardless, but this is the one that will go live at the end of the week. So yeah, nice. We have, our branded colours. It makes it engaging for the student. This is just sort of like a little example video, which I'll play for you in a moment. There's reasons. Scrolling through here, we've got the start of them. You'll see one of the teachers and one of the land on this page. This is how we've decided to get them excited. So how it looks.
Hi, Jane and Chloe. I just wanted to let you know we've lost your connection when you're screen sharing with all of that bandwidth going to video. Are you still there? Looks like we've lost Jane and Chloe there because we've just lost all that bandwidth, that video. So we've got someone in the background who's going to go and see if we can grab them. But what I might do in the meantime is I might invite Alison and Lani to the stage.
But this is really sort of now
Chloe and Jane back,
empowering them a little bit more to, if they are making videos with their
Hi Lani, hi Alison, how are you?
If they have assignments for English class.
Fantastic. I might ask you to give us a brief introduction to yourselves and your use of Capture the Action. Alison, I might hand over to you.
Make that assignment better.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Alison. I teach Year 5 at Wilderness School. I think I've been here at Wilderness for about 12 years. And yeah, Jane gave us the opportunity, Jane and Chloe, earlier in the year to trial the website, trial some of the lessons. And yeah, my students have just loved it. Yeah.
Can I ask quickly, how did you use it? Like, how did you use it with what age groups?
So grade 5, so they're 10, 11 years of age, and they had done, a little bit of filmmaking before. Previously, we've had one of our middle school teachers come down for a term and do some lessons. But yeah, they just responded really well to the platform because They loved the videos within it, being able to work through at their own pace and really take ownership of their learning and where they were at. And then, of course, making their own films. And within the program, they take on different roles, from editor to director to camera person, etc. And yeah, so they felt a real sense of ownership within that.
And what about yourself, Lani? Whereabouts were you using Capture the Action in your teaching?
I work at Wilderness as well. I'm the assistant head of the junior school and I lead the teaching and learning there. And so Jane asked me to look through Capture the Action and sort of consider how the curriculum is structured and the curriculum links. And she's embedded through there, which is really useful for teachers. Lots of additional curriculum knowledge to extend students and support students, but also the purpose of each lesson and how students can understand whether they've actually achieved the purpose or not. And so I guess I come from a curriculum perspective, and I think the program's really well thought out and well structured, and it's really easy for teachers to use as well. I liked the way that it feeds back to a dashboard for you, and you can align student ability with different lessons, and they're all taking those different roles as well. So it was really great to have the kids all working as a team collaboratively, but taking away their different skill sets. It was letting each of them shine. So yeah, we thought it was wonderful.
Fantastic. So we actually have Chloe and Jane back. Sorry, we lost you at some point when you started sharing your video. You lost all your bandwidth and we lost you. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, David. Is it perhaps maybe worth not perhaps showing video and just going through the steps? Maybe that might have been the reason why we.
What would be really good is we've only really got a few minutes left because of the time frame. So I thought what we might do is just spend. I just asked Alison and Lani where they use Capture the Action in their curriculum. I guess really just I wanted to sort of ask a few other sort of direct questions, and I'm really interested, Lani and Alison, about where you see teachers are getting the best benefit from using a platform that's allowing students to be these filmmakers.
I'm happy to speak to that if you like.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, we're in a bit of a crisis in teaching at the minute, aren't we? We've just had 3 years of COVID and we're nationally short-staffed. We've never had so many subjects to teach and we have an overcrowded curriculum. So, and on top of all that, anyone that's been in a classroom will be able to tell you the variance of ability within a classroom is huge. So allowing every student access is absolutely key. And when you layer all those things on top of each other, video and film give this unique opportunity for kids to share their abilities, share their thinking, share what they're good at. I think also you need to think past school, like it's becoming a key need. Often now when people are submitting CVs, you'll notice that they ask for a 1-minute video to sort of introduce yourself and give a bit of a pitch. I know I had to submit a conference proposal the other day and I had to make a video, and that's not a skill set I was taught at school. So I would say that it was really integral that we actually, as teachers, embrace this, because it's shortcutting student access to high quality work. It's also skilling them up for the future, and it's reducing our workload. So I think the program is really cleverly designed because it doesn't have to sit as a separate subject. It can sit within HASS or within science, and you can be making films about something else. So you're ticking off many areas. I think it's really key.
And if I can just add, the way that
please do.
My students sort of just expect that they should be able to format their learning and their ideas within film. It's just sort of second nature to them. And what they're presenting, you know, their parents are just beyond their expectations. But we use making film in all different subjects, from humanities in our history this year, science, English, different competitions, understanding their own character strengths. So there's just so many applications. And once they've got the skills to be able to present their own learning and findings is amazing.
Fantastic. And I guess because we're running out of time, I guess I wanted to just finish with you, Chloe and Jane, and give me a bit of an idea of what the onboarding process looks like for schools. How do they get started with Capture the Action?
Yeah, well, for now, like I said, we've got a landing page, which is, you know, just send us an inquiry. But as of 2023, like what they'll do is they'll go to that site that I showed you, and there'll be different pricing structures available. And once they decide, okay, we want perhaps 50 users for the site, so that might be, 2 Year 5 classes, then we would then get in touch with, or they would say, we want 50 users. They would select that category, and we would get in touch with them, and we would onboard them with a single sign-in. So they would be signed in within 24 hours. It would be pretty quick and easy. That's how long it usually takes to onboard a school. And then if the whole school wants to adopt it, that's probably our main key, is getting a whole school on board, because then you've got your Year 3s or your Year 2s doing the basic course, you've got your Year 4s doing the intermediate courses, and you've got your Year 5s and 6s doing the advanced courses. And then the school just becomes adept at knowing that every year or every second year their students are moving through the course, that by the end of Year 6 they're basically filmmakers.
Fantastic. Jane, Chloe, Alison and Lani, thank you so very much for sharing a little bit about Capture the Action. Sorry we had that technical difficulty, but it's given us a great insight, and it leads off the conversation we were having before. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that brings us really close to the end of public programming at EduGrowth. I want to join me in thanking all of our speakers who gave us their time today. So we had Jen, Chloe, Yanni and Alison giving us some ideas of how they're using it. Earlier we heard from Michael, Tara and Matthew, where they were talking about the research behind using video within education. We've got a few private events happening across EduGrowth before now and the end of the year. So we've got our syndicate program, where we have that in early December. So if you're one of the CEOs that part of our ClearPath syndicate, we look forward to seeing you there. On Tuesday, the 16th of November, we're facilitating a roundtable looking at how the New South Wales government can support the growth of the New South Wales EdTech ecosystem. And so if you're a New South Wales-based EdTech company, look out for the invitation to that really important conversation. So thank you all for participating today. If this was your first EduGrowth event, welcome, and we look forward to seeing you again either late this year or early in 2023. Thanks very much.